Welcome to This Week in BJJ, the world's first and only live jiu-jitsu show. Brought to you by Zebra Mats, simply Z-Best, Q5 Labs, Stay Alpha, and Defense Soap, defend what you have built. And here's your host, Budo Jake.
Hey guys, here we are back on the mats, and today I'm joined by Liam Resnekov. Liam has one of the best academies in Australia. Unfortunately, I haven't been to Australia yet, but start off and tell me about the academy.
Oh, okay. So we've got an academy called VT1 Academy. It's in Sydney's North Shore, which is a nice area. And we're part of Gracie Sydney, Gracie Humaita Association under Bruno Pano and Hoyle Gracie. So we've been running for about 10 years. And we've got, top jiu-jitsu fighters, top MMA fighters, and top Muay Thai fighters. And I run it with my brother, Dylan, who's sitting over there, but he's not on camera today.
So jiu-jitsu's grown worldwide. We've
Absolutely.
seen, especially in America, it's just exploding, particularly in Southern California. Tournaments worldwide, the attendance has gone up. How is it in Australia?
Australia jiu-jitsu is really blowing up. At one stage, MMA was a lot more popular, but jiu-jitsu's kind of just taken off there. I think it's, and MMA's actually gone down a little bit, which is interesting as not just business owners, but as martial artists. But yeah, it's blowing up. It's good. There's a lot of competitions. That was one of our problems in the past. We didn't have enough competitions to kind of breed good athletes. There's almost too many competitions now, which is interesting. So last year there was, 2-3 comps a month. This year's slowed down a little bit, I think kind of as a rebound. But no, it's gone really strong. We're starting to get athletes doing well in, international scene. Abu Dhabi, we had some good guys. We've got Kit Dale. Do you know Kit Dale?
Yeah.
Really? Everybody knows Kit Dale. When we were over at the UFC, everyone's like, hey, do you know Kit Dale? They even thought our guy with the beard was Kit Dale. So yeah, Kit's a good guy though. He's done a lot for Australian Jiu-Jitsu. But yeah, it's really strong. And I want to ask you said it's blown up in California. Why California particularly, do you think?
Well, I think one factor is the weather. Brazilians love warm weather and surfing.
Yeah.
And here's one place you can do that. Of course, Hawaii is another place. But there's a lot of opportunities. There's a dense population and a lot of people here that like surfing, skating, also like jiu-jitsu. So it seems like every month there's another academy opening up, and none of them are closing.
Well, we saw a couple of them on the way here.
I'm sure you did.
Yeah, well, Sydney, California is very similar to Sydney, the weather.
Okay.
So Sydney's got very strong jiu-jitsu. A lot of Brazilians come to live there. There's a lot of beautiful beaches there. But Melbourne actually is one of the jiu-jitsu powerhouses. For the people in America who don't know, it's kind of below Sydney. It's a little bit colder. There tends to be less Brazilians there, but they've got a very strong jiu-jitsu scene. I think they put a lot more time into it than some of the other states, I think, which is, it's interesting. They've developed almost their own style of jiu-jitsu, and Kit's from Melbourne, funny enough. But Sydney's the same as California. It's beaches and attracts a lot of Brazilians, which is great.
Is there one guy who's known as like the originator of jiu-jitsu in Australia?
Yeah, there's a couple of different. It's funny because I talk to a lot of Europeans about their jiu-jitsu, and basically whoever arrives in your country is who's going to kind of shape jiu-jitsu for the future. So back in the day, we had I think it was Marcelo Bering, was it? I forget which Bering brother it was, but he put an ad in the newspaper challenging, anyone to a fight. I think it was $100,000. So that was kind of our first taste of jiu-jitsu. After that, one of the first guys was John Will, who's quite famous in America now. He was putting articles in our local magazine back in the 90s before the UFC, which was quite unusual. But so he came from the Machado side. So if you go to Australia now, the Machados are still very strong. I don't know what it's like in America. Is it strong in America?
They have, there's so many Machado brothers. They all have their own schools, but they don't seem as organized as some of the other Gracie teams. There's not a lot of, the networks aren't as big, at least from my point of view.
Yeah, Machados seemed to integrate well with other martial arts. Yep. I think that was kind of their thing, whereas the Gracies were kind of challenging other martial arts originally. So they were really popular with kind of the karate guys and stuff when they came. So Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris. But it's the same with Australia. A lot of the karate styles picked up the Machados because they had that clean image. And so that was the ones down in Melbourne was John Will. And then there were some other guys in different areas in Sydney. For example, like Christopher De Weaver was my first coach, and they went the Brazilian top team way. They were originally, at that time, I think they were still Carlsons, and then they split, but they were the BTT style. So in Sydney we had the Machados, we had the BTT guys, and then we had a couple of guys, show up here and there. We had Larry Papadopoulos, who was a famous MMA fighter. He was running it. So we kind of had about 3 schools, and the Brazilians who come to Australia were kind of blue belts and purple belts. So, I remember when I started, the top guy in the country was purple belt, which was John Will, and purple belts from Brazil would come on a holiday, and we'd think they were gods. We would just, my friends who were blue belts would go to wrestle with them, and they'd come back going, shit, they know everything. Like, they got the answers to everything. So I remember purple belts being gods, when I started. It's a bit more different nowadays, but yeah, so we had, Chris De Weaver, John Will, we had Larry Papadopoulos, Anthony Lang is another one. He was one of the guys under the Machado. So we kind of had that, and then in about 2000, some Brazilians started arriving. So we had Paulo Guimarães, he coaches a team called Roots. He was there, and he briefly taught actually at my academy for a while, and then moved towards the beach, as I'm sure. Does that happen here a lot? Yeah, so he moved towards the beach, and so it was a good experience with him. He had a real Vale-Tudo style of jiu-jitsu, which was really nice, which has kind of disappeared a little bit nowadays, I think. But in 2001, we started getting guys from Gracie Humaita coming. So we had Bruno Pano, who's my coach, coming. That was the first taste of that Humaita style, which was really nice. We hadn't seen that before. And then Marcelo Hazendi came. He was the first kind of Baja guy. So he set up Baja there. So it's funny because we had all that competition between the 3. I'm sure it's the same here. But they were all best friends. Right. You know what I mean? So we go to comps and it was blah, blah, all that sort of stuff. But they're all really nice guys, and they were best buddies training together. So they were quite isolated at the time. So that's kind of my understanding of Australian Jiu-Jitsu. But it's funny because if you watch it, it's literally like Europe or wherever the Brazilians settle, their style just is the base. Yep. So our Australian Jiu-Jitsu is very different to what I've experienced with American and Canadian Jiu-Jitsu.
How would you generalize the differences?
I think it's a strong thing in a way.
Americans are strength?
No, well, okay, if you go, how I look at it's like this, okay? So in Brazil, when you go there, it's kind of like learning Samba. Have you ever done Samba or Samba? It's very difficult. The Brazilians it's a bit like Thailand. My brother found the same when he went to Thailand. It's not, there's certain intangibles that aren't taught, and they seem to just, that flow, that beautiful flow Brazilians have, it's just not something in Australia, or it seems like America and Canada, that we naturally get. So what I've noticed with Americans, and similar to Australia and Canada, is they've got this very regimented style of jiu-jitsu, and it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. A lot of us start in our 20s, and it's very practical, very pragmatic, and it's very much based around setting traps and making everything easier to learn, which I like. That keeps me interested. I'm sure for you as well, because you're as I understand, you're a bit of a late bloomer with.
Yeah, I started when
jiu-jitsu.
I was 30.
When you were 30, how old are you now?
40 this year.
Are you 40? That's great, man. You look young. You must be married because you got grey hair. For late bloomers like yourself, I was lucky. I started when I was 17, so I got started young. But for guys like you, the American style is great because it's very pragmatic, very simple, so we are catching up, I think, and same with America with the flow and the beauty of it. But do you see the same sort of thing?
Yeah, I don't know. To me, I think it maybe just comes down to mat time. A lot of the Brazilians, they don't have jobs,
yes.
At least not as demanding jobs as we have. They live with their parents until much later in life.
You have the best job I've ever seen. You got the best job.
But when you can only roll a couple hours a day, you're only going to get so much flow. But when you can train all day long, I remember when Keenan Cornelius came into our academy as a purple belt, he had awesome flow. He was killing everybody because he was training 3 times a day, every single day.
Yeah, and I operate in a white collar area, and I do have full-time athletes. But there is a huge difference between a full-time athlete and a guy who trains once a day, or 3 times a week. Not to say those guys can't beat the full-time athletes on the mat, but you're right. I think the mat time, but I think that's the problem Australia really had, particularly Sydney, is it's a very nice place to live. You're not getting in street fights. you're working hard. We've got HEX, which gives you, everyone has a university degree, we have education. We've got healthcare, all that sort of stuff. So a lot of the guys are white-collar workers. So that flow, I think, it was recognized early on that we have to be a bit more pragmatic and not focus on the flow. And we do drills for flow. I'm sure you guys do too. But so Australian Jiu-Jitsu kind of is a bit similar to American in that way that it's very... we were only left with a few skills originally. Like I remember my original academy... we'd get new techniques. There was only VHS back then, Panther videos and stuff, Village Ishmael series, which is still my mantelpiece. But we'd only get techniques every 6 months. We'd have Zamario come over and do seminars. We'd have, all these guys come over and do seminars, and they'd just leave us with a few things, and then a year later they'd come back, So what happened in Australia was, I think coaching developed very, very well. I think that coaching and problem solving, so when you look at guys like guys from Peter Debene's academy or my coach Bruno, all the different academies there, the access to information was less than Brazil. So a lot of the guys became not just very good coaches by studying other sports, because that's all we had, but also they had to evolve and problem solve the positions they actually had. So in Australia, you probably would tend to find that Jiu-Jitsu is a little less, I won't say technique focused because they're technical, but fancy combination focused. It's more on training method and problem solving and getting together and working different things, which is great. That's what's kept me interested and made me give up my other careers. I had a career in other things, and Jiu-Jitsu was just big enough to bite a chunk out of. And that issue's problem solving. That hook is problem solving. So I think Australian Jiu-Jitsu might sometimes look simple, but it's very kind of deep. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, yeah, for sure.
Is America like that?
I think so, yeah. Guys are, get used to a couple strong positions and might hold a little bit more, but yeah, it's effective.
Yeah, and I think I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah.
So that's something. We do get caught a little bit with, we bring out the Mendes brothers every year. We have Andre Galvao out. We have all these different people come out. And we adopt what's useful, of course. I'm sure you do too. But there's a little bit of a trap, I think, Australians and Americans sometimes fall for, which is to change their core every time a new position comes out. And don't get me wrong, I study Budo videos, man. I bought your DVD. I bought, for one of my students loves De La Riva guard. I'm good at De La Riva, but I'm not an expert. So we bought the Lange DVD for him, He loves it. That's what he does every day. So just got to be careful, I think, in Australia. It is a bit of a trap, is they're so much better over there than us. They're doing this, So the best schools in Australia have developed their own guards, their own positions, their own things rather than just latching on to. Let me ask you a question, right? When you fight, do you ever fight against guys from Hafel's, the Mendes Brothers School or Cabrinha School?
Not in competition, but on the mats, for sure.
So my thing I always bring up with my students is, and you're a coach too, I wonder if, I want to know if you do this too, is, I have guys there that love the Mendes brothers. Okay? And I love them too, they're great. They're great guys and great coaches. But my guy wants to be a world champion. And so he's been competing a lot and he's copied the Mendes brothers game. So my problem is when he goes to fight in the world tournament, he's going to be using a game that is 3 steps behind what their current students are learning from, or even if he fights Rafael, even more important. Right. So kind of the advice I give to the guys is don't get caught in that trap of copying too much, because they're better at it.
Right.
Did you have that issue with your students?
And I think it's, you bring up an interesting point. When you copy someone's game so exactly like that, you become very predictable.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think the two guys, because of their generosity, they become very predictable, and that's Eddie Bravo and Rafa Mendes. They put out their whole system for guys to see online.
Absolutely.
So when you roll against one of their students, you know pretty much exactly what they're going to do. Doesn't mean you can stop it necessarily, but you know what they're going to do, and that makes it easier to counter.
Yeah, and it also makes, I think, it harder for Australians to compete against the students of. So, for example, I have a student who's living here now, Jonathan Cook. He's a very good competitor in Australia. He's got a very unique name. Jonathan's like the least unique nickname. But he loves his kimuras and his deep half guard and all this sort of stuff, right? And he goes to Cabrinha's academy and he likes Spider Guard as well. And he tried to play Spider Guard on the guys and they murdered him. And I said to him, man, look, what worked for you? And he said, you know, when I played Kimuras and I played close guard, I did better. He didn't say beat anybody, but he just said I did better. And, you know, like he said, the guys were good at countering, getting to close guard. But, you know, it's kind of like my philosophy on Jiu-Jitsu is, you know, you can't be a weaker version of someone. So if he's good at close guard, his whole game should be around getting everybody to close guard, you know. So I just think that's a trap Australians and Americans sometimes fall into, is like, you know, copying too much. You know, it's we're behind if we do that instead of ahead.
Yeah, in fact, Sean Williams said something similar. He said, we shouldn't always be copying whatever's in vogue right now. We should be doing something that fell out of fashion, that people aren't expecting anymore.
And I think close guard's the next thing that's coming back. So we've actually spent the last 3 months working on some close guard stuff. I keep throwing out pragmatically because it makes me sound clever. No. But thinking about, like, look, okay, we're not going to beat the Americans at De La Riva right now. We're not going to beat them at Spider if they're coming from Cabrina's gym. But a close guard in Australia is really good. And the best example I saw was, this really clicked for me before, was I was watching, we've got a guy in Melbourne, Portuguese Vieira, Carlos Vieira, who's got a brilliant close guard. Have you seen his close? No. Oh, jeez. I mean, he's something else with close guard. I haven't even seen him play any other positions. And an Atos black belt came out, and I can't remember who it was, but at the time he was a champion. He was a Brazilian fellow. Just my mind's, all the travels kind of slid mine. And they fought. And Carlos, who lives in Melbourne, who hasn't been at his peak probably for a while, you know, he's moved there and he's a little bit older than the guy, beat him. And I was like, how did he just beat this guy? And he played close guard, and he had good guard retention, and he won by advantage. And I was thinking, why is everybody not just ignoring everybody and just doing their own thing and just making it so strong that, you know, if you put someone in that position, they're dead.
Right.
You know, and that's my philosophy with my students, is, you know, I'll teach you positions, but you need to develop your own kill zones, you know, like copy, yep. But if you're going to copy, make it unique.
Yep.
You know, and you're right, Sean Williams is a brilliant guy as well, and he's absolutely right. If you do what's in vogue, what's going to happen when you fight the guys who created those positions?
Right. And I think that's a sign of a really good teacher, one that doesn't just create copies of himself, but allows his students to develop the guards and the positions that are naturally suited for them.
Absolutely, and if I created copies of myself, all they do is lift weights all day. I mean, you look at me and you think this guy works out a lot, right? But you're a coach, and have you struggled a little bit with that with your students? They come in and they're like, hey, this guy's doing that, I got to stop doing what we're doing, or this guy's doing that, I gotta forget that stuff we're working on, let's do. How do you respond to that?
I tell everybody that you have to learn how to beat every position, or how to get back to a safe position, but you don't necessarily have to be an expert in executing techniques from De La Riva, from reverse De La Riva. If you don't like reverse De La Riva, fine. Figure out how to get back to close guard, or get to spider guard, or do something else.
I mean, look, what you're saying is pretty much exactly the same as what I'm saying, and I think that's one of the strengths of Australians, is that because we were left on our own, we developed a lot of teaching methods, a lot of problem-solving methods. So if you go to different academies there, often it's not do this, do that, do this, do that. It's, okay, let's do this drill designed to help you create your own game. And, you know, like when I travel and I do a little bit of seminars here and then when I have time, that's what I work on, you know, is we just call it kill zones because it sounds cool, right? But, the Hoyler Eddie match, I want to ask you about that after. You know, we collect from other sports, and you'll notice a lot of the academies, you know, they'll collect from teaching, from rugby, from this and that, and use those methods because we simply just didn't have the technical things. So when I go to do seminars, I don't teach technique, we teach like kill zones, and it's exactly what you're just saying. Like, 1, what is your kill zone? 2, how do you strengthen it? 3, what are the counters to the counters? 4, I'm like counting on my 5th finger, you know. 4, how to get back there from every position. So play a little De La Riva, play a little spider, play a little deep half guard, whatever you have to play in order to get back to your comfort. You call it comfort zone, which is a lot less daunting than kill zone, right? But that method, not the technique, is what I think is very important for students. And I'm sure you do that in your own way, which is because you started a bit later. You know, you had to develop that.
Yeah, you can't be lost in any position.
No,
you know?
Absolutely. And all the guys, like if you go, like I'm lucky enough to travel to Marcelo Garcia's every year, and firstly, a plug to them, and I have nothing to do with them. They are the coolest people. Have you been there?
Yes.
Okay? Oh, just awesome. Everybody there that's around Marcelo starts to look like him. The big smiles and, you know, like just the coolest people. So we go there every year, and you know, I do privates, I learn techniques, and it's the same with seminars. I come back and I can't make them work, you know, and after a while we started looking behind what was going on, and you start looking at Marcelo, and you start realizing what makes him successful isn't a technique, it's how he trains, you know, and how he believes in his own training method. And his own training method is how to bring everything back to him. I mean, it's nothing revolutionary, everyone says this, but it's so easy with being pulled away from what you do, you know?
Yeah, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking you have to do all these things that all these people are doing, and there's not enough hours in the day.
Yeah, it's funny because Jiu-Jitsu is a bit of an insulated world. Did you do another sport before Jiu-Jitsu?
I did Aikido for about 20 years.
So, I mean, you've got I was lucky to start in other martial arts as well, to get a bit of perspective, especially from like things like Judo, and see Jiu-Jitsu and how it's going a certain way. And all these things that's happening in Jiu-Jitsu have happened in Judo already. You know, the rule changes, the political issues, the fancy gis,
right.
Which are great, by the way. I'm just saying, like, as in, you know, all the different things have happened, and I find a lot of jiu-jitsu don't have perspective sometimes, you know.
Yeah, like team breakups. You know, that happens in every martial art back hundreds of years ago.
Well, what do you think about loyalty and respect? Those two words.
I think they're very important, but I think it goes both ways.
Explain that, because that's where I was going.
So, you know, people say, like, you know, be loyal to your teacher, be loyal to your team. But I think that's true, but we need to keep our eyes open and not just follow blindly. You know, not to name any team names, but if your instructor is doing bad things or, you know, doing bad behavior, then you don't need to be loyal to that person anymore.
It's a powerful position.
It is a powerful position, and one that sometimes an instructor can easily take advantage of.
Well, let me ask you, Jiu-Jitsu seems to have lost a little bit of the martial arts thing, and I think that's a good thing in a way, because it's taken away from the bullshit, you know, like the guru-ish nonsense, you know, like my students call me whatever name they want, you know. At the moment they call me professor, but not because I like it, it's because it pisses me off. And they call me sensei, and I'm like, don't call me sensei, okay, sensei. Right. You know, like I went to one seminar, I was teaching a seminar, my students were like on the mat bowing sensei, and I was like, kill them. You know, these two bloody larrikins. I hear a lot of talk of loyalty and respect, and then I think, you know, I mean, do you think teachers are loyal to need to be loyal to their students and respectful to their students? I find like a lot of the guys saying that don't give their students loyalty and respect. Do you find that a little bit?
Sometimes, yeah.
You know, they don't always do the right thing by them, and those are the loudest guys, you know?
Yeah, and I think the confusion, I wrote an article recently for Jiu-Jitsu Style magazine on this very topic.
It's awesome. Great magazine.
And that is the fact that Jiu-Jitsu is not just a martial art, it's also a sport.
Yes.
So, and it gets confusing based on which lens you're viewing it as. So if you're talking about it as a martial art, then of course loyalty and respect are paramount. You know, you got to have that. But if you're looking at it as a sport, it's just a sport. If you don't like your teacher or your team, you leave. It's no big deal. There's no hard feelings. But it crosses over into both.
It's you everything I've said, you said better than me, which is fantastic. I'll have you on my show next.
So Liam, you have a guy that trains at your academy, Jason Gulati, who designed the CXT.
Yes. Jason's a good friend of mine. I don't actually have anything to do with the CXT in terms of he just, you know, I help him experiment with it. He trains out of Academy, Grace Sydney with the coach, but he comes over and trains with us. And, you know, he's been testing this for a couple of years on us. And we're at that cool stage in Jiu-Jitsu we talked about before where, you know, like even my students are creating things. Like I got a guy who's got like Patches O'Toole, he's got a patch business, and, you know, all these guys have got their grapple athletics, you know, things. We have this capability, and Jace is kind of like a very kind of pragmatic, clever dude. And he basically just saw a problem with Jiu-Jitsu, and this is his solution, you know. And, you know, it's basically, he's very good at transitions, and he was using the Swiss ball a lot, and, you know, he threw a gi on it, and then he bought a big gi to throw on it, you know, and it just wasn't really, it didn't have that kind of right feel, you know. Besides, what his whole thing is, he's a strength and conditioning coach, was he likes things to be specific. So the Swiss ball was good for developing balance and stuff and transitions, but it had no orientation to, you know, where the arm is, where the head is. So his idea was to do this. Now, the first, like, 20 times he made it and brought it to our academy, it was terrible. I'm not going to lie. It had, like, little wooden arms, and, like, it looked ridiculous. It looked like, I don't know what it looked like. But I mean, they've been experimenting with this for a while, and he's kind of found the balance for it. And he said he's actually developing a gi for it. The funny thing is, where we've actually been using this the most is actually our MMA guys, using it on the wall and the ground. But our Jiu-Jitsu guys love it. And one of the reasons I like this for my academy is, have you ever had a white belt come in? He just watched Leo Vieira and Andre doing the ball throw. Yeah, the white belt comes in, says, I want to be a world champ, throws the ball to his friend, jumps on and lands on his head.
Yeah.
So this solves that problem for me. The guys can mount it, they can stand on it, they can do anything they want, and there's no way it rolls over. Thank God, because I do not need an insurance. I do not need to get sued for someone breaking their leg or arm. So first thing is it's safe. That's the one thing Jace was going for. And the second thing is the orientation of the limbs. And he's a super smooth guy. I mean, when he's in America, you should get him on the show. His jiu-jitsu is unbelievable. But his transitions are unbelievable. And he's been playing with the Swiss ball for a long time. And this is his kind of next evolution of the Swiss ball. You know, it's looks weird. You get weird looks. My kids in my class love it though. They call it tink tonk and they have it like this and they beat it up and throw it and double leg it and try and crawl under its legs and stuff. But yeah, it's a good piece of material. Have you been using it in your academy?
A little bit. I mean, there's a ton of different drills that you can do with it.
Absolutely.
I like knee on belly drills with it because nobody likes being the knee on belly victim, for more than a few minutes.
Especially if you ate dinner before.
Yeah, especially bigger guys too.
Well, Jace would love this. Have you got some stuff that you can add to his system? Anything you can add, like unique drills?
Now, the main thing that I like to do is just to get it knee on belly position and go side to side, just to get that feet dexterity of not getting caught in half guard as you get over, but kind of windshield wiping your feet from side to side.
It's harder than it bloody looks, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
You look at it and you think, I'm going to get on this and just ace it. The first time I got on it, on his new version was on camera. And I was like, stop, cut, let's do that again. But this thing's bloody hard. It's really hard.
What kind of drills do you like to do with it?
I mean, for me, like I said, we've been using it mainly for our MMA guys and our kids. We hold this, the kid does the double leg, he does a duck under, he snaps it down, he does his double leg, he goes to guard and he can practice all his sweeping and lifting drills and throwing drills on it. So our main use has actually been for our kids' classes. That's been really good. But I mean, for this, I, like doing pretty similar to what you're doing, practicing. Jace really likes the idea that, it's the orientation. It's like when you're doing the knee through drills, the knee pass drills, we call the guard the swamp. You never want to go back to the swamp, right? So as you were doing it, you haven't had much chance to practice, your foot keeps getting caught. And what's the most frustrating thing in jiu-jitsu? When you're past the guy's guard and you feel that bloody claw nip onto your foot and you're like, Jesus. So the thing is, we practice the drills you were doing, right? Boom. Then we practice getting our foot caught, practice knee through drills. Then we practice X-pass drills. And then we practice all sorts of drills, sitting through, bringing the knee under, and doing like long step drills, stuff like that. As soon as Jace gets the gi for it, it's going to be magical too, because you're going to add your chokes and your grips and stuff. But the main thing is we go first, position, then we go problem, so I got my foot caught. Then we do the knee through counter, that doesn't work, we do the X pass, then we do the smash pass, then we practice doing the long step. And you can do that for all those things, and also it stops your brother or your girlfriend or whatever at home getting annoyed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I think we've all woken up our wife or whatever and said, hey, let me practice this.
Hey, I want to try this wrist lock out. Girls have got flexible wrists, so I was like...
That happens about one time, and then she won't let you.
My brother won't even let me do jiu-jitsu on him anymore for that. But, I mean, those are the sort of drills, I mean, what you do with it's kind of limitless, The big problem is you've got to have a little bit of ability to kind of visualize. Yeah. If you go up and you go, I just lie on it and do a bit of this and that, it's not going to be any good. But as soon as you start, step back, problem solve, next step problem solve, next step problem solve. It becomes, a very intricate tool, But that's limited by the person, not by the tool,
Right. And this guy never says no.
He never says no. Never. And kids love beating him up.
Yeah.
The thing for me is like the separation from martial arts was one of the best things that happened to jiu-jitsu because it got rid of the gurus and the bullshit and the ability to manipulate and like for me, I think you guys did it. I can't remember, but there was an episode on I think it's from San Francisco, Health Gracie. My students love that guy.
Kurt Osiander.
Kurt Osiander. They love that guy. I think everyone loves him, right? And he's got this theory about killing the master.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best thing about jiu-jitsu is like, man, I went for a run 2 days ago before I got sick, and I was like, when I get back, my students are going to try to kill me now, Like I've been on Budo video, they're going to try to smash me. So it's got rid of that, but yeah, I mean... like sometimes I get really into jiu-jitsu and about mindfulness and how it's a great tool for, mindful practice and, all that sort of stuff and how it's a great tool for meeting friends and for breaking ego and all these sort of like, lofty lessons. And then sometimes I just go, they're just wrestling in fucking pajamas.
Right.
But sometimes people just forget it's bloody pajama wrestling,
Right. Yeah.
So that's where I think having a background in wrestling or judo or rugby or Aikido can give you a bit of perspective, like it's just... pajama wrestling, but it's so much more.
It is, and it's hard. I don't think it's healthy just to look through one lens. You have to sometimes look at both.
Well, when you teach, do you separate? How do you get a good balance of that? That's a question.
I'm struggling with that, but I try to be right in the middle. I think there needs to be protocol on the mats and needs to be some etiquette, but I don't think you have to, treat it like a military either.
It seems like, I've got a question for you because you're in the kind of center of jiu-jitsu right now. And my wife's starting to hate me because every day after class we're talking, you sit around talking with all the students, where's jiu-jitsu going, what technique, this and that. Jiu-jitsu seems to separate into sport only or self-defense only. Mm-hmm. And it's become a really weird place for me because when I started, you did jiu-jitsu, and everybody fought MMA once or twice just to test it. It was just there was a real connection with it, and I think the fact Jiu-Jitsu split is great into sport because it's allowed it to. Look at Hafels. It's art.
Yeah.
And that's their academy name. But this disconnection from fighting's been a bit odd for me from my background. Like the newer guys have no connection to MMA or fighting, self-defense, and I don't have a problem with that. In my academy, we've got sports-only guys and they're champions and they love it. And then we've got self-defense, but it seems like the schools are really taking like a stand, and it seems to me a little negative in a way to some degree. What's your kind of feeling on that?
Yeah, there definitely are rifts, and I can see that the rift even broadening. But to me, I see jiu-jitsu a little more on the sporting side. If you see everything from the point of view like I can punch you from here, you shouldn't be doing going upside down, all that stuff. Then to me, you should be practicing MMA.
Yeah.
And no-gi or MMA. I think no-gi is closer to MMA than gi jiu-jitsu. There's people that would argue that you need to practice the gi to get good at MMA. I don't know about that. But I just don't think self-defense should be. Self-defense should be closer to MMA in no-gi grappling than gi jiu-jitsu, in my opinion.
Do you guys cross-train wrestling and judo? Or judo, one or the other?
No, usually, at least at Gracie Baja, there's a little bit of takedowns in the beginning of the class, but it's not on the level of judo academies.
Do you think that's See, we have a judo and a wrestling coach at our gym, right? Because where I started, you didn't do jiu-jitsu without wrestling or judo. It'd be crazy, right? Like a lot of the old coaches were black belts, including the Baja guys. They're all trained judo and wrestling. But nowadays I have students who have no interest in wrestling or judo, and I let them do it because if I didn't, that would be my ego. You know what I mean? It's like, this is the way. That'd go exactly against my philosophy of coaching, right? Firstly, they're beautiful sports. They're amazing sports, but look, it's just a weird thing. Like, I can't imagine jiu-jitsu without some wrestling in it, or judo training. It's just, it's evolved that way. Do you think long term that's going to be a weakness?
Yeah, and it's a big topic, but I think ideally, yeah. Especially if we all had time, we should all be training wrestling and judo and make this beautiful competition where we throw the guy, he passes guard, mount, and choke him out. But there's only so many hours in the day, and a lot of the guys our weight size show that you can get a really good guard if you just ignore all the takedowns and just focus on the guard.
Well, it's funny, man. The big wake-up call for me is I went to Japan and I was competing. And I had my game plan set. If I grab a left collar, I do this. I grab a right collar, I do this. He grabs me. He pulls guard, I do this. We touched hands, the dude jumped at me.
Right.
And I ran back, circled off. I'm like, all right, when he gets up or I'm going to pass him this way, he just stood up and jumped at me again. I was like, Jesus, like all my planning just went to, like we fought after, but all my game plan standing just went. But that was a good wake-up call because then we started, problem solving and, putting it into our kind of like method sort of thing about how to deal with guys pulling guard, and it became its own art. So it's beautiful in that way, but the other day, I let, for my instructors, my students, sorry, some of them like to coach a little bit. I think it's important do you make your guys coach a little bit?
When they get up in rank, for sure.
I think it's important?
Absolutely.
I think it is too. There's a loaded question, you can see, because I had that. But no, I do think it's important, and I actually got a question for you about something. I'll come back if I'll remember. But, the guy goes, all right, so we do teach self-defense and Vale-Tudo in our fundamentals, and after blue belt, we let the guys go, which is I think Baja does something similar, and I enjoy that part too, We don't get too carried away, though, with like wrist locks and stuff like that. This is the basics. But the Vale-Tudo stuff is fun. Mm-hmm. And so for my guys, when they get their stripes, there's technical stripes, and then there's contribution to the academy stripe, and there's contribution to the art. So I make my guys contribute to jiu-jitsu. I want them to, grow their game down or do something to where they're actually contributing to the sport. Because otherwise, you're just copying, right? And one of the guys, for his contribution to the academy, I come upstairs and they're holding, this guy, Lawrence Lai. He's really good brown belt, but he's like a funny dude as well. And he was making all the guys hold kick shells. I go, what are you guys doing? And they were doing a pride stomp session. And the funny thing is the guys loved it, like they're all competitors and stuff, but when was the last time we put on shin pads and took the kick shells and did pride stomps and stuff, And in the end, it actually ended up being good guard passing drills anyway, because there's still a lot of integration. But, I mean, it just made me miss those kind of days of the connection,
Right.
But my question for you is, there's a lot of guys out there now who are getting their black belts quickly, like Lloyd Irvin pushes. Well, here's a funny one. Lloyd Irvin put a post up about you should be embarrassed if your blue and purple belts go to another academy and can't hold their own, right? And then on the flip side, he was advertising the 5-year black belt. And I'm thinking to myself, which one is it? There's a lot of that now. So my question for you is, what is a black belt nowadays?
I think it depends. I think it depends if you want to be. I try to be a well-rounded competitor. I want to know a little bit about everything, and I know I'm not going to be, amazing at any one aspect. It'll take a long time, but I like teaching, and I just want to know everything about the art. I love learning, as opposed to a competitor. And you mentioned Lloyd Irvin. Let's talk about Gigi Jackson, for example. He's an elite level competitor. He holds his own against the best in the world, but you only see him do 2 or 3 different moves. Absolutely. And that's not to slight him. That's probably what he should be doing to get that good that fast. But do you want DJ doing a seminar? I don't know. He could probably show you a couple really good moves, but I don't know what the rest of his game is. So should a black belt be somebody who knows a little bit about everything, or should a black belt be somebody who knows a couple techniques really good? I think it depends what your goal is.
Well, that's the thing. There's no real division, but one of the unfortunate things is my guys go to a competition, my full-timers do well, and then my non-full-timers do well too, until they meet a Kit Dale. And I've got a guy who's he's becoming full-time now, but he was Australian champion of brown belt, right? This is Ilan, I'll give him a plug, Ilan Rubenstein. He's a funny dude as well, but he's really good brown belt, did really well, and he's still brown belt competing, but he just met Kit 8 times, and Kit beat him 8 times in a row. And it was just one of those unfortunate things where there's no division between do you know what I'm saying, the professional athlete and amateur athlete.
Right.
And it can be discouraging, I have guys who want to be world champions one day, and they'll quit unless they can train the same way as the Mendes brothers, 8 hours a day, right? I mean, even Marcelo, I was speaking to him, and I call him first names, we're buddies. No, but I mean, he's very approachable, and I was speaking to him, and I said, what do you think about the training, 8 hours a day? How often do your competitors train?
Most of them, a couple hours a day.
Yeah, so two sessions, an hour and a half to 2 hours max. Yeah, so which is kind of what they're doing in Brazil. A lot of people talk about 3 or 4 sessions, but most of the Brazilians I've spoken to are doing either a long session, a really good long session, or an hour to an hour and a half twice a day, which is good. But Marcelo said, as soon as I heard about the Atos style of training, I started doing it because I had to keep up, And I mean, this happens in MMA, it happens in every sport. And he said within a week or 2, I hurt my back, my knees were sore. He said, so I went back to training an hour and a half twice a day, and I won another world title. And that's not a criticism on Atos. It's Atos, I mean, Jesus. I mean, Andre's a genius, and Robin Lemus and the Mendes, but they're geniuses. But it's this big thing we're talking about in Jiu-Jitsu, being caught, in other people's traps and not trusting your own training.
Right.
So, a lot of our guys look and they go, well, I can only train 5 days a week, once a day. Is it even worth me doing Jiu-Jitsu? So how do you deal with that? Because I'm sure you get that here.
Yeah, and I think for young guys who are willing to throw everything away and dive right into Jiu-Jitsu, man, go to Atos or go to Cabrinhas, go to a place where you can train all day long.
Oh, so you I encourage them to go to America and do that.
Yeah, why not? But for someone like me, I wouldn't want to train in that environment. That's not a slight on them. They're awesome academies and they train super hard, but I want to have a little bit more balance in my life.
Absolutely. Now, a black belt who believes in balance and a black belt who believes in go fast and fast and furious. Why are there not 2 coloured or different stripes for that?
Yeah, there should be a different color bar.
There should be.
Like that.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I think about a year and a half ago, I was a little disillusioned with Jiu-Jitsu. Do you ever get disillusioned with the scene? Not the actual training, the scene.
I don't personally.
Yeah, I mean, you're in the middle of it, but I got a little disillusioned with the scene of it. There was a lot of Lloyd Irvins and this guy saying, you have to train this way, you have to train that way, you have to do it. If you're not doing this, You're not doing the right thing. And eventually I kind of collapsed in on myself a little bit, you know, and I just, like in my head, I just put up the middle finger and I was just like, fuck everybody. You know, in my academy, we're going to train how we want. Yep. We're going to, first and most importantly, enjoy Jiu-Jitsu. Yep. Because, I mean, I'm sure you gave up everything you do to do Jiu-Jitsu because you love it, right? Yep. And those are the first and most important things for me for Jiu-Jitsu. And, you know, the second one's problem solving because that's enjoyable. Yep. And then the third one is, you know, like how well you do in competitions. And as a result, our guys did better in competitions.
Right.
You know?
And I think that's a common trap that people fall into. They see the Andre Galvalas and Marcelo Garcias, these Cabrinas, these high-level instructors, world champions out there, and maybe their instructor's not a world champion. And they feel like like they're in the wrong academy.
I'm a champ. Australia champ means like a good fellow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's like a champ.
Right. But you know, you don't have to train at those academies to get good. And I think the most important thing is that you're enjoying the training. And you know, some of the best instructors are not world champions.
Look, I know my coach Bruno Pano, who's a brilliant instructor, straight out of Humaita. He he learnt directly, worked at the academy. He was a brilliant coach. And I know he felt a little bit of pressure. I mean, if he's watching this, he'll probably kill me. But I know he felt, when Atos and stuff started in public, he felt a lot of pressure to catch up, you know. And he did the right thing. He brought guys out. And, you know, we updated our jiu-jitsu, and I brought the boys out. And we are always updating. But I could see a period he went through of jiu-jitsu where he felt like, and I felt this way, you know, like almost inadequate, you know. But I've trained with almost every world champion that's famous in terms of seminars and stuff. And they're all great guys. That's the first thing I noticed. They're all great guys, right? They're all brilliant on the mat. And they're all good teachers. I've noticed that. You know, Cabrina and those guys, I actually haven't trained with Cabrina. I hear he's great, by the way. But, you know, the Mendes brothers are good teachers, for sure. But my coach Bruno is probably the best teacher I've ever learned from. Yep. And he's not a world champ, you know. I've learned more about the depth. And, you know, as I get older, I'm sure you're the same. Jiu-Jitsu becomes less about moves and more about angles and personalizing it and all those little things that get you excited. Like, you know, for example, like I couldn't get out of mount. And I learned a little detail from my coach about where your hip sits. Suddenly I'm getting out of mount. For days, I was walking on air, you know. So for my students, I really like giving them those little nuggets, you know, like you sneak it under the table, you know. So that's the thing that really excites me. So, you know, I can see the pressure on myself, but also my own coach, I could see that. And, you know, like, probably the same as your coach, man. Some of the best coaches in the world are not world champions, you know?
And oftentimes they're maybe not the best specimens, you know? Things come easy for guys that are in incredible shape.
Absolutely.
Guys with normal, you know, bodies have to work a little bit harder and learn those small details. Absolutely. If you're super strong, you can just rip out of grips and you don't have to worry.
There's some saying, like I heard a saying about screenwriters or writing, and they said, you know, writing is for people who find writing difficult. You know, and I believe coaching's and I've struggled with jiu-jitsu, man. I'm sure, like, you're built like a dude who does steroids and, like, you know, but no, but I mean, you're not a strong-looking guy. I'm sure you are, you know, flexible and strong, but, you know, I've watched you roll. You're very technical. I bet you struggled, man. I struggled a lot, man, and I still struggle, you know, and that's the struggle that keeps me interested. Yep. You know, so I think jiu-jitsu is for people who find jiu-jitsu difficult. Yeah. You know, and I think that helps you coach. Absolutely helps you coaching, you know, and yeah, I think that's what made my coach a good coach. I think that's what helps me, you know, strive to be a better coach. And I'm sure you're fantastic. I haven't seen you teach, but I have your DVDs. Fantastic, by the way. That inversion DVD was fantastic.
Thanks.
You know, so yeah, it's an interesting place at Jiu-Jitsu. It's calming down a little bit now. Yep. You know, you think? I think so. The one thing I was going to say about the 5-year black belt thing, like DJ Jackson stuff, do you find they tend to plateau a little bit?
I would find it. I don't know those guys, you know, so intimately like that, but
yeah, don't beat me up.
I would be surprised if they weren't a little bit burned out after training so
Absolutely.
hard in such a short amount of time. For me, it's always been about keeping it fun, but I'm not trying to be a world champion either.
Well, I've got a 50-year-old black belt in my gym who, not black belt, sorry, brown belt, I said black belt. He thinks he's getting his black belt now. And I look at this guy and I'm like, that is what I want to be. This guy rolls, moves, beautiful hips. He's a boxing coach, actually, Mr. Calabotti. And I look at this guy and I'm like, dude, if I'm rolling when I'm 50, yeah, that's my goal now. But, absolutely. You know, I still want to produce world champions. I'm sure you do too. But my jiu-jitsu, especially after I injured my back, I was out for about a year and a half. My jiu-jitsu changed remarkably. Like, I had to change my entire style to make me be able to roll, not relapse. And you said you had the same issue with your back. So now I look, like you said, balanced, you know. And I think, you know, if I look at the champions like Marcelo, he is a balanced guy. Yep. You know, he says no when he wants to, you know, like he rides his bike, his family's important to him, and if you ask him for a seminar instead of taking the money, he goes, no, I want to focus on my academy.
Right.
You know, and I think that's a great model for the sport.
Yeah, and I think he's probably changed a little bit, especially after, you know, his new additions to his family. But he was on Rolled Up. I asked him about balance, and he said at that time he didn't believe in balance.
Really?
He said if you want to be a world champion, you can't have a balanced life. You have to focus on that 100%.
Well, look, I agree with that, but I think one of the senses I got from Marcelo was he's got balance within his training.
Yeah.
As in, the thing that's brilliant about him is, you know, a lot of kind of intelligent guys, I'm sure you've had the problem being intelligent when you're running this great business and, you know, you're a black belt and stuff, is focusing. Because, you know, jiu-jitsu tends to attract people that, you know, like when I was in school, my teacher goes, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, important. You know what I mean? Like, not important, but I just don't want to settle. I want to do something different. You know, I want to, you know, try and do something that changes people's lives, etc. Same as you, I'm sure. Do you find the same sort of thing? It attracts that personality. And I think, like, you know, I was saying about jiu-jitsu is for people that find jiu-jitsu difficult. I mean, the hardest thing to be a guy like Marcelo is to decide to commit your time to jiu-jitsu, because he could do anything he wants, that guy, man. Anything he wants. And I look at all the guys in my academy. I've got some talented guys in my academy that they come from not training for 6 months. They'll go to a comp and win a purple belt comp. And I look at them, I go, do you know what you could do? But they're doing medicine. You know, and I'm like, you know, so there's that challenge in jiu-jitsu, that personality like Marcelo is to, like you said, no balance. But what I really kind of take from that is I chose to focus on something strongly in my life and not let anything distract me, like girls and, you know, other hobbies that, you know, could really, video games and all the other things, you know. So, like I said, I don't want to get too up on Marcelo, but he's a really good role model for the sport, you know, I believe. And the Mendes brothers and Andre are the same. They don't let things distract them. They pick something, choose. But I do think they've got balance in their lives. They eat well, they socialize, they, you know, they've got good family relations, you know, that sort of thing. So I did notice they all very balanced in that sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Balanced in their singular focus of jiu-jitsu.
Absolutely. Do you struggle with focus, with career focus?
No.
Yeah,
I'm doing what I love to do, so it doesn't feel like.
You know, I mean, I'm looking at this place and I'm like, man, this is Disney World for jiu-jitsu guys, you know.
Thanks.
So it's amazing.
So you mentioned Metamoris.
Yes.
Eddie Bravo versus Royler Gracie. You being Humaita black belt. What did you think about the match?
I think people, and I've traveled to Burbank. I've trained at Eddie Bravo's. I mean, I'm a jiu-jitsu nerd, probably like you, or geek is a better word. Because I still eat my own lunch. But I've traveled there because I saw something new and I thought it was amazing, right? A lot of guys get a bit funny on that sort of stuff. So I like Eddie's techniques and I love what he brought to jiu-jitsu, you know. So I don't want to make this sound like a one-sided opinion. I think people made a bigger deal out of that than they should have. It became this weird, like, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu versus 10th Planet thing. And, you know, people are like, oh, didn't Royler prepare for Eddie? And I'm thinking, have you watched the match more than once?
No, I only watched it once.
Watch it twice. Because the first time I watched it, all I saw was the lockdown and the sweeps and the electric chair and all that stuff. The second time I watched it was a little bit different. And Royler did some really good things, man. I mean, he had some really good little, you know, like, and that's what I like about Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. It's all about the little, you know, the little nuggets, the little pieces. And he was doing some really good stuff in there. Like, he obviously had prepared, he counted the rubber guard, and, you know, he was blocking the crossface. He knew what Eddie wanted, you know. But the problem was that, you know, and it reminds me of a story when I was in Brazil. I was at BTT and this guy was fighting, and everyone would come up and practice jabbing him. All the jiu-jitsu guys would come up and jab him. And so he's fighting this guy who just beat the Budo champ at the time, not Sato, Sakurai. He just beat him with a jab. He used that jab to smash the guy. And so the game plan Mr. Laborio put together, who's a brilliant guy, is counter the jab. Everything's about the jab. So everyone's walking around, southpaw jab, southpaw jab, southpaw jab. Counter him. In the street, they'd walk up to him. We're getting lunch with the guy, and they come up and go tap on the shoulder, jab, you know? Great idea. The guy goes in there and fights, and he got murdered by the jab. Not just the jab, everything else he got murdered by. And, I mean, it turns out the guy's fighting was Anderson Silva. So, you know, so how do you prepare for that? And I think the problem, bring it back to this story, was Royler would have prepared for the rubber guard. He's a clever guy. He's a multiple world champion, you know. Royler would have prepared for the lockdown and the electric chair. The material's out there. He's not a stupid guy. He's a very, very clever guy. But you can't prepare for Muhammad Ali's right cross. It hides behind the jab. You can't prepare for Anderson's jab because your training partner is not going to be able to do it like Ed did. So I've got a really great counter for the lockdown. I'll show you that I haven't seen anyone do. It works marvels for me. If Eddie put me in the lockdown, I'd probably tap. You know, like his lockdown is his kill zone.
Right.
So how do you prepare for that? You know, Hoyler did his best. You know, like people could say strategically he should have passed standing, this and that, but if you watch the fight again, you can see he really prepared for that fight. And unfortunately, Eddie is that good at lockdown, and he found that and exploited it. And I mean, it was magic to watch. Once he got his flow, jeez.
It was a great match.
Hoyler's toughest guy in the world, man. But once he got that flow going, it was magic, you know? So, to come back to the point, I think people are making a bigger deal out of that fight than it was. It was just a really good guy exploiting his strength on the other guy, and Hoyler prepared, and he's the toughest dude in the world. But you know, I watched that match and I stole some of Hoyler's little things. You know, I didn't just watch the finish. He did some beautiful little things, and then that week we worked the lockdown at my gym. It's a Hoyler Academy, but we worked the lockdown. It's useful.
I think every academy in the world was practicing lockdown and electric chair sweeps that week.
You guys are doing it as well, yeah. But you know, it's useful, and I think I don't see Hoyler or my coach Bruno telling me not to do that.
Yeah.
They'd be like, look, man, it's a good position. It was the crowd that made that into something else, you know. And unfortunately, Hoist made that into something else, which is, that's a whole other thing. I got a lot of respect for Hoist. But Hoyler was like, thanks, man, for bringing me out here and making me fit.
Right.
You know, I'm 50 years old, I'm on the mat. I really enjoyed watching how he acted, you know. And Eddie's a genius.
Absolutely.
People don't like him sometimes, but man, the dude's a genius. Have you had him? You've had him on the show, yeah. I've watched, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, he's a nice guy too, man.
Absolutely.
Gets a hard rap.
One of the biggest jiu-jitsu nerds in the world.
Yeah, he is, man. He is. He's a great coach. So that's my thoughts on that, you know. And I think my coaches support me on that. That mentality.
Yeah, and a lot of people said, you know, if it was an IBJJF event, it would have been scored in Eddie's favor and this and that. But the point is, it wasn't an IBJJF event. It was submission only. So everything else that happened is irrelevant. There was no winner to that match.
Look, I mean, I think the audience won. I mean, so I just got married a week before we flew here. And my wife went on her honeymoon in Italy, and I went here to the UFC.
Oh, wow. How'd you manage
Quebec.
that?
Geez, it was booked before the Quebec for the UFC, but I was in the limousine and we're driving there, and my brother's like, "You're an idiot," and I had my phone under here and I'm watching the match. I'm like, "Come on, Hoyler, come on!" You know, like it was who lost in that?
Right.
I mean, Jesus, it was one of the most exciting fights I've ever seen. You know, so I don't know. People get a bit weird about that stuff. I mean, were you excited?
Oh yeah, it was the best event of the night.
Chewing your nails.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
fantastic, man. And look, we were talking about it before. And Eddie's jiu-jitsu, I think, is very similar to what I described as Australian jiu-jitsu. You know, that kind of idea of, it's not about new techniques, it's about training methods and learning and stealing from other places. And he's got really good, uses numbering systems and stuff. But also, that idea is he didn't listen to anybody. Everyone said that rubber guard's rubbish, that lockdown's nonsense, this and that. And he just kept like this, and he kept developing it, and that was the showcase that came out, you know. And the one reason I respect him the most out of that, and it's the same reason I respect the Gracies, because they did the exact same thing with their style, is he put the blinkers on, and he just kept going to the gym every day and experimenting. Go to the gym, experiment. Develop. It's not winning world championships yet, but at some stage, like Sean Williams said, it's going to do some damage. And that was kind of that showcase. And for me, that was, as a coach, was one of those moments where I was like, this is why I do it. You know what I mean? Same probably for you, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And Eddie's really focused. He figured out the jiu-jitsu that works for him.
Absolutely. I mean, I still see a disconnect between that and MMA. I think the people who push that towards MMA, I don't know about that. And I asked him that question when I saw him backstage at one of the UFCs. I said, you know, what do you think the difference between, like people say in MMA, don't play guard. Like one of my favorite coaches in MMA is Robert Fowler. I don't know if this guy, he coached Randy Couture, Chalson, all those guys. He's one of the best jiu-jitsu coaches I've ever seen, man. If you ever get a chance to work with this guy, and I don't have anything to do with him other than we're just friends, sometimes jiu-jitsu guys only look within jiu-jitsu. This guy is not just one of the best corners, but the best at developing games and counters and stuff like that. And the lockdown position counter, I'll show you, he showed me. So he says to me, he goes, look, don't play guard. In MMA, you get to your feet. And I asked Eddie Bravo that, and I go, well, why would you play rubber guard instead of getting to your feet? He goes, well, if you get taken down or you end up on your back against a K1 champ, why would you get to your feet? Because he's going to murder you. So I see his perspective. If you get on the ground, keep him in your guard, clinch him, all that sort of stuff. So I do see that perspective. I do think butterfly guard's taking a bit of a backseat for MMA, and I think that style of jiu-jitsu is a bit whatever. But I don't know, man. Do you see the connection between, that style of jiu-jitsu and MMA still? I'm not sure I see it still.
Well, I think that if you're really going to preach that your jiu-jitsu style is the best for MMA, then you better be practicing with gloves and proving that it works.
Well, he did have that idea about that sport. Do you remember that?
Yeah, what's that called?
It was a weird and interesting idea. And look, that's what makes him good.
Yep.
He does that sort of stuff.
Yep.
I mean, do you guys ever put the gloves on for jiu-jitsu?
No.
Yeah, we only do that up until blue belt, but after that we let him go now, because I think sport's kind of its own thing now.
Most of the guys are in it for the sport, at least at Baja.
Yeah. No, there's nothing wrong with that, man. Yep. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that feels like we're moving on to techniques now.
Should we cut there? Technique time. What have you been working on down in Australia?
Hey, it's a good question. Well, I can't speak for everybody else. I can speak for the fact that Australians are good problem solvers. So in their own academies, everyone's got their own little specialties, which makes jiu-jitsu exciting. Well, let's go over a lockdown counter that we've been working. It's worked really well for me. I haven't seen it anywhere else. It was showed to me by Robert Follis before, who's an MMA coach, but it's a really good lockdown. So let's have a look at that. So the big problem with lockdown is, firstly, if guys are good at it, it sucks. The second problem is when you counter it, people put you back in the bloody lockdown as soon as you start initiating your passing. So you have to pick your passing. So this is a combination of that and the kind of theory I learned from Rafael Mendez, which I call like high knee passing. So I'll get to that in a sec. But the first thing is obviously you have to make sure that the dude doesn't smash you from here. So you got to be quick about it. Okay, so we use our short lever on your neck, long lever on the ground, short lever, long lever, so that I'm controlling your upper body. So I don't want to lock my hands because I'm going to get smashed here otherwise. So I'm hitting the point. First thing. Second thing, my left foot is so my left foot is going to come underneath here, and I put it on my own shin bone. Now, if you keep the lockdown nice and strong here, all I'm going to do here is it's going to pop out. But here's the problem. Everyone's going to counter to the lockdown, and then you get put back in the body lock. So watch, this right foot now is going to tuck underneath my own shin. I don't let go of the pressure here until it goes underneath. Nice. Now, as I tuck it here, I hide my foot back on. Now, the position's not over yet, but so that's the first position. I'll just do it full speed quick. You're here, you lock me down. First thing, I'm going to make sure that it's smashed. So short lever, long lever, long lever. Okay, nice. Second thing here, this foot comes under my shin, I pop it, and I keep the pressure here lifting. I bring my heel underneath here, and now I'm going to hide my foot. Now here comes to the next part, which is high knee passing. So I don't want to get my foot back in there. So a lot of people, they come like this, and they're back here. Okay, that was dramatic, but you get the point, it's frustrating. I once spent 10 minutes in the guy's position countering and getting really locked down. I'm sure you know. Okay, so I come to here, I counter it, I hide my foot here, and I'm here. Yes, I'm hiding. Now, the next thing is this. My hand's going to come to his hip here and I grab the material. Okay, nice. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to bring my foot to his bum by now. Even if he's got the guard locked, just a little bit. Yeah, I'm just going to be careful where my foot is. Now, I'm going to start initiating my knee through pass, or my mount pass, but the thing I have to be aware is where my knee is. I go like this, I get locked down. So as I start passing here, I come to here, my short lever, long lever, my knee comes to my chest first. And I notice Rafael Mendez does this a lot, called high knee passing. He passes with his knee on his chest so the guy can't ever get a good bite on his foot. And then I start passing. And then from here, straight away, hide your foot. Well, very important, just quickly, for the side controllers, if I go here, and I sit here, a lot of the flexible guys, will do that gel break and I'll hook your foot. So very important, irritating. Michelle Nicolini's a genius at this. So I'm here like this, I hide my foot here, and I keep those hips controlled. So there's no chance of going back into that swamp over there. So that's one of the counters. And combine it with high knee passing, it's pretty effective. Yep. So the most important thing is to not let the guy re-bite.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's cool.
That's a really good one.
Yep. Yeah, so that's the first one. Second thing, which is kind of a specialty of mine. This is another modification. So, like I said, problem solving is my thing. I like it. So, I was doing a seminar down in Adelaide, and they have a lot of judo guys, man. And these guys have strong rips. And as you know, not being a strong guy, finishing chokes on people with strong rips is really difficult. So we did what I call the accelerator, the accelerator choke. Okay, I can call it the foot stomp choke. It's not as fun. So basically, I'm here like this. I take you back. I'm going for the traditional bow and arrow, basically. And the coach had just had the Mendez brothers down, so he expected me to roll with the entire seminar. And I'm thinking, oh great. So the guys start grabbing at your hand and they're super strong. So you just grab it, just grabbing on my hand, even on, just two hands, really strong, so I can't really finish this. Nice, so if I go for the bow and arrow here, the strong dudes, they just won't let me get it. Okay, so what I started doing was called the foot stomp choke. So I open this up here and I just completely ignore this here. Nice, so you can pull hard on this hand as hard as you want, nice. So what I do is this, my foot comes to here, I insert on the outside of my foot here like this. You don't have to be flexible, you just have to make sure when you do it, you don't try and get it around the foot, you punch your hand towards your pinky like this. So it goes straight like that, boom. Then you put your foot in here, nice. Now from here, as I start turning, you gotta make sure your elbow is locked down, because the guy will get out otherwise. And now I just gently push like this, boom. Nice, now if you can, I'll do it gently on you, but hold as hard as you can on that hand there. Doesn't matter how hard you hold there. Once I start doing this here like this, it comes on. So I was like, man, my grips are starting to blow. I need to change something about this bow and arrow choke, I'm sorry, it's a painful choke.
That's a good one.
But so I use that, and I've used it every day since. So
that's awesome. I remember seeing somebody do that at the Pans of the World a year or two ago.
God damn it, I thought it was my position.
But it's an awesome one.
Yeah, look, I mean, the problem's always going to be the same, so there will be solutions everywhere, all over the world, but that's my favorite choke, I think, so.
So you go to once you get the back?
Absolutely. Really? Yeah, because I've got little, you got strong looking hands, I got girly hands, so my problem is I can't hold on too long, so my foot's stronger, so I use that. The third thing we've been working on, as we talked about it before, I think closed guard's going to make a comeback soon. I think it's still a very strong position. It's not sexy, like a lot of the new positions, but anyone can play it. So if you've got a bad back, you've got anything, you're not athletic, you are athletic, you're long leg, short leg, you can play closed guard. Right. Now the problem with closed guard is everyone stands up and passes. See, back in the day when it was popular, people would pass on the knees, right? How funny is it when white belts are trying to open on the knees? You're like, that's never gonna work. Right. So one of the problems was, and I've got some really big, strong brown belts, I put in my closed guard, I'm like, I got you now. They stand up, I'm like, I've got, sweeps and counters and this and that, but the guys are good, man. They don't let you put your De La Riva in, they don't let you get a foot on your hip. That's what I teach them, so I want to kill them. But so the goal is to keep them in your closed guard and cook them. Yep. So, we've got three basic approaches we like to do. It's kind of like a 3 count, but the first thing is to keep them on the ground. So to stop them standing up. So just a really simple thing, and I've been using this for MMA, I've been using this for no-gi, and it goes right into your Sean Williams guard, sort of stuff that you guys have been, putting out. It's really simple. The guy's in my guard, I need his hand on the ground, I need to stop him standing up. Okay, so the first thing is, even if you're being strong, I grab the collar. Now everybody goes for the sweep here like this, but my goal's slightly different. So I'm here, I'm just gonna turn us around a little bit. So I'm grabbing as far as I can, and I'm taking a legal grip, but it looks illegal. So you see the line there like that? I put my fingers on the outside of it, and then I curl it like that, so it's still legal. But it feels like it's an illegal grip. Nice, and I go as far as I can down the leg. The closer I am to the knee, the less leverage I have, right? So I'm here, nice. Now, I grab the collar here like this, and I put my hand here, I'm gonna pull out and up, and all I'm gonna do is just do my tilt sweep here. What do you guys call that sweep?
Flower sweep.
Flower sweep, beautiful. So I just go like this and put your hands on the ground, because the guy is gonna counter. Yeah. Nice, so as your hand hits the ground there, one of two things is gonna happen. I'm either gonna take the fast side here, so I'm gonna take the fast and hold on to you, or if your hand happened to be here like this, I'm gonna take this side and hold on to you, just to stop you getting up. And then you play whatever you want. There's a million variations. The point is, I don't really care what people do in the closed guard. I do, obviously, but that's not my goal. My goal is to stop you standing. So as soon as we hit here, I block you, and I worked hard to get from my open guard to my closed guard. I get here, if I wait for 1 second, you're on your feet. Yep. And it's hard, right? So as soon as I hit my closed guard, I come here, I relax for a second, and as I relax, then I go. Relax, go. So as I get closed guard, I go, relax, boom, hand to the ground. And then I either attack this side or that side. The most important thing is keeping them down. Yeah. The no-gi variation is very similar. I just grab the back of the head and I go under the leg. And this is for MMA or no-gi. And I just sweep them just to get that hand on the ground. Mm-hmm. And then I go that side or this side, depending on what I want to achieve. That wasn't as smooth as it should have been, but you get the point. Yeah. So that's the thing we've been working. And the third thing we've been working for there is getting the hand across. Now a lot of people pop the grips, and it's hard, right? You come to here and you try to pop it. What they don't realize, the gi is not that effective. Okay, so if I go here and you've got a strong grip, which you do, nothing's happening. I go here, I'm popping. So we stopped using the gi as the lever and just started using it as an attachment. So my guys go here and they practice doing this fast. They can do it both sides fast. 1, 2, 3, thumb in. They pull the gi down and they put the palm in like this. So down and palm in. The real trick's the thumb. So most people do this without the thumb. thumb in. Now, I'm gonna pop it up and that way. And you can hold as hard as you want. Boom, it's gonna pop easily. Now, here's the second part. If I stay here and I go like this, you're gonna re-grab, right. So Marcel is brilliant at this. I'm twisting, and then I go to work. And then we've got our whole series coming off here, sweeps and arm bars, blah, blah, blah. But that's the key here is, don't rely on the gi. Too many people wear gi and they rely on the gi. The gi's the attachment, but the actual body contact does the work. So 1, thumb under, palm press. Now I push up, so this goes sideways, this goes up, boom, straight away here. So you can't re-grip my gi, and now I go to work with my legs. Yeah. I mean, it's so simple, but it's just important, you know. Absolutely. So when my guys hit guard, get to close guard from open guard, I tell them first, relax boom, relax boom. Straight away, hand on the ground, pop the hand across. And that gives them that time to kind of incubate the guy in their closed guard, you know. So that's the kind of jiu-jitsu I like, you know.
Absolutely, beautiful jiu-jitsu.
Cool, yeah, thanks, man. Sorry, just not fancy, but the stuff that makes me excited.
Hey, it works.
Yeah, it does, absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for sharing with us today, Liam. It was great hearing about Australia and your perspective.
Thank you for having us. We really enjoyed it. This is an amazing place.
Thank you. If people go to Australia and they want to find you or online, where can they get?
So they can go check us out at VT1 MMA.com.au. So it's V Victor T for Thomas, the digit 1, MMA.com.au. And we're Gracie from White Academy, so Gracie Sydney is the association that we're under. So come check us out, we're friendly, we have visitors all the time, you know, and we just love being on the mat.
Great. Well guys, thanks for watching, and if you want to pick up one of those Combat X trainers that we were training with earlier, we have them right here on BudoVideos.com. Thanks for watching, see you next time.
That concludes this installment of This Week in BJJ. Watch and review past episodes on iTunes and YouTube, and then be sure to join us again right here for another live edition of This Week in BJJ, brought to you by BudoVideos.com.